The flowers never stop coming. Even after 28 years, bouquets still line the path to Althorpe, their petals bright against the English grass. Some are fresh, some fading, but all carry the same message: the world has not forgotten. Yet for Charles Spencer, brother to the late Princess Diana, memory is no longer a comfort. It has become a weight, one he never asked to carry. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. In a quiet moment on Giles Brandreth's podcast, Rosebud, Earl Spencer spoke candidly about what it means to live in the long shadow of Diana's death. His voice was calm, but his words cut through the myth that still surrounds his sister. "I tell you what I do find quite difficult," he said. "Occasionally, total strangers come up and feel they must tell me where they were when they heard she died." He pauses there, the restraint almost audible. "I'm sure that's helpful to them," he adds softly, "but it's not entirely helpful to everyone else." What he describes is more than awkwardness. It is the strange burden of collective grief. To millions, Diana's death was a personal loss, a rupture in history that demanded commemoration. But to her brother, it was the loss of a sister, an intimate wound exposed to the world. Every year, that boundary blurs again. People approach him in airports, shops, churches, desperate to share where they were on that August night in 1997. Some cry, some reach out to touch him, as if contact might close a circle of mourning that never ends. One woman, he recalls, clutched him to her chest and told him she grew up with Diana, though she was from South Dakota. He smiled, he said. "It doesn't matter." It is a strange kind of fame, not his own, but inherited through loss. For Charles Spencer, grief has become public property. Each August 31st, the anniversary of Diana's death, brings both solitude and intrusion. "I get fundamentally unhappy on the 31st of August, he admitted. "I try to be really busy because it's just terribly sad." He still visits her grave, a private island on the lake at Althorpe, where the willow trees dip into still water. He cuts flowers and lays them gently, often joined by his children. There are no photographers, no ceremony, just silence. Yet even that silence feels temporary, knowing the world will soon speak again in headlines and hashtags, reawakening a story that refuses to rest. Diana's death remains one of the most witnessed tragedies of the modern age. For those who adored her, it became a reference point, a moment of "where were you when?" For her brother, it became an inheritance of strangers' sorrow. He says he understands their need. "I'm sure it's helpful to them," he repeats, almost kindly. And perhaps it is, because for many, Diana wasn't just a princess, she was a mirror. When asked why the fascination endures, Spencer's answer is both analytical and deeply human. He says, "I think it's different things to different people, particularly to women of a similar age. They really invested their lives in hers. Maybe they had an unhappy marriage. Maybe they battled an eating disorder. There's plenty of Diana to look into and take your bit out of, almost like a horoscope. You can make it make sense for you." It's a striking metaphor. Diana as horoscope, a constellation of meanings, endlessly interpreted. Everyone sees something different in her, and in doing so, keeps her alive. His friend Julian Fellows, the creator of Downton Abbey, once suggested that Diana's power lay in her paradox. Like the great film stars, there was something unhappy in there that triggered an emotional response. It is that unhappiness, beautiful, tragic, unresolved, that turned her from icon to myth. But myths demand caretakers, and Charles Spencer has become the reluctant guardian of one. Each year, documentaries, retrospectives, and dramatizations resurrect her story. Each year, reporters return to Althorp for commentary. Each year, strangers reach out to touch him as if he were the priest of a national memory. It is the cost of being related to the most photographed woman in history, to live in proximity to something too large, too luminous, to ever die quietly. Yet amid this spectacle, Spencer's reflections reveal something rare: restraint. He never indulges in sentimentality or anger. Instead, his words carry the rhythm of someone who has learned to live alongside history. He recalls their shared humor, irreverent, he says, and their mutual dislike for snobbery. In that brief glimpse, Diana reemerges not as an icon, but as a sister laughing across a childhood table. It is the version of her few remember, the girl before the crown, before the cameras. But even that private memory is shaped by the public story. When asked about the decision for Prince William and Prince Harry to walk behind their mother's coffin, Spencer's voice shifts. He admits he opposed it. "I didn't think it should happen," he said. "I thought they were too young." The palace, however, had other plans. "I was told by Buckingham Palace that it was happening." The statement is quiet, but it speaks volumes. It suggests the old tension between family and institution, between human grief and royal protocol. Even in death, Diana's story was choreographed. He does not linger on bitterness. Instead, he recalls the one figure who offered calm amid the chaos: Prince Philip. He was brilliant, he said, describing the late Duke of Edinburgh as a very good grandfather and a calming presence during those impossible days. It is a reminder that even within the monarchy's rigidity, there were moments of compassion, moments unseen by the cameras that watched the world grieve. Today, nearly 3 decades later, that grief remains strangely alive. New generations discover her through documentaries, series, and social media tributes. They speak of her as if she were still here. But for her brother, the memory has not softened with time. "I get fundamentally unhappy on August 31st, he said again, not for effect, but because grief, unlike fame, does not fade. It only learns to live in silence. In that silence lies the true paradox of Diana's legacy. The world mourns her endlessly, but rarely listens to those who actually lost her." Charles Spencer's weariness is not resentment, it is realism. He understands that Diana's story belongs as much to history as to family. Yet in his words, there's a subtle plea to remember the person, not just the myth. Because myths are safe. They don't change, they don't disappoint, but people do. And perhaps that's why the public clings so fiercely to its version of Diana. Perfect, compassionate, betrayed, luminous. But to her brother, she remains something simpler. A sister whose laughter he still hears, whose absence still reshapes each August. When he visits her resting place, there are no cameras, no crowds, only the sound of wind on water and the whisper of leaves around the island. It is here, away from strangers and headlines, that Diana finally belongs to him again, if only for a moment. And yet, the world beyond that lake keeps calling her name. Maybe that is the price of compassion lived too publicly. Diana's openness invited the world in, and it never left. Her death became a collective wound, and her image a sanctuary for those who saw themselves in her struggle. As Earl Spencer himself said, "There's plenty of Diana to look into and take your bit out of." That is both her gift and her curse, because every person who takes a piece of Diana keeps her alive, but also keeps her from resting. In the end, perhaps this is the quiet tragedy of legacy, that love and intrusion often arrive